always thought was pretty cool? Detectives. I grew up on a steady diet of Sherlock Holmes and Dick Tracy. Batman was my favorite superhero growing up, and not because he's the goddamn Batman. It's because he's supposed to be a detective. I even wanted to be a detective when I was a kid, so it's probably no surprise I would eventually find myself talking about a game like LA Noire. It was released in 2011, developed by Team Bondi, and produced by Rockstar Games. Development actually began in 2004, but the head of Team Bondi, Brendan McNamara, was apparently such a nightmare to work for, people kept walking out and release kept getting delayed. He's such a bastard, apparently, that after the release of LA Noire, Team Bondi disbanded, and no one in the industry wants to work with him. But I'm not here to talk about McNamara, I'm here to talk about the game. The game takes place in 1947, post-World War II Los Angeles. We play as Cole Phelps, a decorated veteran who fought in the Pacific Theater and returned home to join up with the LAPD. We follow his career through a number of different departments, starting out as a beat cop, then transferring to traffic, homicide, vice, and arson. The cases are all fun and interesting. Unfortunately, the rest of the game kind of isn't. In between mysteries, the gameplay is kind of like Grand Theft Auto. You run around a city, there are cars, you have your own of course, but nothing stops you from stealing others, or commandeering them since you're a police officer. There are a number of cars available, from 1947, and boy do they sure control like it. The vehicles are slow and clunky and they turn like swinging a tree. This would be fine if there were some variation between the vehicles, but they all feel the same. And the city, it just feels kinda dead and empty. Driving around Los Angeles doesn't feel fun and exciting, it feels like a chore. So fortunately, there's the option to skip travel and just arrive right at the crime scene. There are also side missions where you run out to a crime in progress and have to resolve the situation. There are 40 of these in total, but don't get your hopes up, it's just a variation on 3 different activities. Shootout, foot chase, car chase. The only one of these that's any fun at all is the foot chase, because you get to parkour across rooftops and through crowds. Shootouts are boring because the game auto-locks onto enemies and you're just hunkering down behind cover, then you tap aim and shoot with the auto-aim doing all the work. The car chases, well, I already told you how much fun it is to drive cars in this game. Now do that while trying to closely follow someone at, and I put this in the biggest air quotes possible, high speeds. The cases themselves are awesome. You check out crime scenes, look for clues, interview witnesses and suspects. You really feel like a legit detective. The interviews are what really made this game stand out when it was released, because LA Noire took advantage of a state-of-the-art motion capture device, using it to capture their actors' faces from all angles so they could really get down minute facial expressions. During interviews, you ask questions, and when they give their answer, you get 3 options. Truth, if you think they're being honest with you. Lie, if you know they're being dishonest and you have evidence to prove it. Or doubt, if you think they're lying but have no evidence to prove that. To determine which choice to make, you have to watch the person's face. Like police conducting real interviews, you have to watch for micro-expressions, little facial movements that can indicate whether or not a person is lying. Now, some of the actors are a little, well, bad.
No, I didn't go anywhere near that car.
But in later cases, some of them are really difficult to pin down, even if you know exactly what you're looking for. Another thing I thought was pretty interesting is that a number of cases, most notably the ones on the homicide desk, are loosely based on real-world crimes. Let me go a little true crime for a minute here, and I'll put a timestamp so you can skip this if it makes you squeamish. On the morning of January 15th, 1947, the naked, mutilated remains of a woman named Elizabeth Short were discovered in a vacant lot on the west side of South Norton Avenue in Los Angeles. She had been cut in half at the waist, and her face had been cut from the corners of her mouth to her ears in what's known as a Glasgow smile. After her death, she became known by the nickname the Black Dahlia. The real-life case of the Black Dahlia is one of the country's most famous cold cases. It has never been solved. So the game takes some liberties here. You don't actually get to investigate the Black Dahlia crime scene, but a lot of the murders at the homicide desk appear at first to be copycat killings, and the further you look into things, the more apparent it becomes that they've all been the work of a serial killer. In the end, the police chief sweeps the whole thing under the rug because the killer ends up being the brother of a highly elected official, and it would be a huge scandal if word got out. The characters in the game were pretty solid. Since most of them are actual actors who've been motion captured, they look really good, and there's a certain level of realism to their faces and movements, which can be lacking in a lot of other games. One of my favorite characters is the captain of the Homicide Division, James Donnelly. He's this over-the-top Irishman, the one who first saw the potential in our main character Cole Phelps and suggested his promotion to detective. He refers to the detectives in his precinct as crusaders and often speaks in poetic biblical references, being deeply religious. But if you pay attention, he uses his beliefs to hide the fact that he is in fact actually a sadistic nutjob, having zero qualms about beating confessions out of people whether or not they're actually guilty. It makes him a very complex and interesting character. My least favorite character is Cole Phelps. Yeah, he's supposed to be our main character, but he just sucks. He's got this no-nonsense, play-by-the-book Boy Scout personality, but it's really just a cover for the fact that he's kind of a bastard. At one point, during the Vice cases, he cheats on his wife with a German lounge singer named Elsa. No reason given, it just comes out of nowhere. When his wife finds out and kicks him out, he just starts living in Elsa's apartment, continuing on, business as usual. And his biggest concern isn't his wife or kids, it's what the whole thing is doing to his career. In flashbacks to the war, we get to see what he was like as a commanding officer, and he sucks. He follows orders to the letter, even if it gets his men killed, even when he knows it will get his men killed. At one point, he orders his men to execute civilians in a field hospital with a flamethrower. Sure, towards the end he seeks redemption and gives his life to save others, but good lord, this man's a bastard! A better main character would have been Jack Kelso, another guy who served in the war alongside Phelps, though whereas Phelps became a CO obsessed with his career and earning medals, Jack became the sergeant of a rifle company, fighting alongside his men and always looking out for their best interest. Stateside after the war, he became an investigator for an insurance company, then later takes a job doing investigative work for the district attorney. He's basically a private eye, but with official backing. Through most of the last act of the game, you actually play as Jack instead of Cole Phelps, as they work together to unravel a seedy criminal organization run by some of the most influential men in the city. He's basically the archetypical film noir hero, which is everything I wanted in the main character of this game, and didn't know I needed until I got to play as him. So where do I stand on this game? Well, I enjoyed it for the most part. Solving cases was a lot of fun. It's exactly the kind of thing I'm into, and it was very well done, particularly with the impressive facial capturing. Everything else, well, the development of this game was a mess, and you can tell. The city feels dead and unfinished. Everything outside of the cases themselves feels like minimal effort was put into them. With the action sequences and driving feeling like they were inspired by Grand Theft Auto, and they tried to emulate them badly, I kinda hate the main character and would have much rather spent the whole game playing as Jack Kelso, a much more interesting character who I feel suits the role as the lead in a film noir-style game much better. There have been some mutterings about making a sequel, and I would personally really love that. The crime solving was great, and I would love to see this revisited with more effort put into the rest of the game. However, a sequel seems unlikely since the company that made the original no longer exists. Overall, I would suggest playing through it for the cases. They were a real blast. Just skip the rest where you can. I've been Tom. Thanks for watching.